There is a claim making the rounds. Silver demand from electric vehicles is just a nice supporting story for the silver bull case. A minor tailwind. A footnote in the broader supply and demand picture. And on the surface, it sounds reasonable. EVs are new. The silver volumes are hard to quantify precisely, and the green energy narrative has been oversold so many times that people have started tuning it out. But when you slow it down piece by piece, you realize some of it is solid, some of it is stretched, and the part that is being consistently underestimated is the part that actually matters most for silver prices over the next decade. The claim that EV silver demand is a minor tailwind is not just incomplete. It is backwards. It is one of the most significant structural demand drivers that silver has seen in its history as an industrial metal. And almost nobody in the mainstream financial press is explaining the actual mechanism. I am recording this right now from Los Angeles, and I want you to comment what day and date you are watching from, because this is a long-term structural story, and I want to see how the conversation evolves over time. And real quick, if you value this kind of breakdown that goes past the headline into the actual industrial mechanics, subscribe and comment FinTalk OG so the algorithm knows you want more of this. Now here is the vibe that has been flying around. Silver is used in EVs, therefore EV growth is good for silver. That is the bumper sticker version. Plausible, but incomplete. Because the real story is not just that EVs use silver. It is how much silver they use, how that compares to traditional internal combustion vehicles, why that silver is functionally unrecoverable, and what it means for silver supply when you scale EV production to the volumes that government mandates and automaker commitments are targeting over the next 10 years. That is not a footnote. That is a structural demand story that makes the investment thesis for silver significantly more durable than most people understand. So I am going to break down three things. First, the actual numbers. How much silver goes into an EV, where it goes, and why it is different from traditional automotive silver use. Second, what happens to silver supply when you scale those numbers across projected EV production volumes, and why the mining industry cannot respond fast enough. And third, what this means for how you think about silver as an investment if you care about the fundamentals rather than just the momentum. So let's start with what we can verify. A modern electric vehicle uses significantly more silver than a traditional internal combustion engine vehicle. The numbers vary depending on the size of the vehicle, the battery capacity, the power management system, and the specific manufacturer. But industry estimates, which are publicly available through Silver Institute reports and automotive industry supply chain publications, suggest that a typical EV uses somewhere between 40 and 80 grams of silver per vehicle for its electrical systems. A traditional ICE vehicle uses roughly 15 to 28 grams. So you are looking at roughly double to triple the silver content per vehicle in an EV compared to a conventional car. Now multiply that difference across the projected shift from combustion to electric across the global automotive fleet, and you start to see why this matters. Here is where it goes in an EV. Silver is used in the battery management system where it handles high current switching that requires a material that does not generate significant heat or electrical resistance. It is used in the power electronics, the inverters and converters that manage the flow of electricity between the battery, the motor, and the charging system. It is used in the charging connectors themselves, particularly in fast charging systems where the current loads are high enough that inferior conductors would overheat. It is used in the sensors and the advanced driver assistance systems that require reliable low-resistance electrical connections. and it is used in the photovoltaic cells that are increasingly being integrated into vehicle roofs and hoods as supplementary charging surfaces. Silver is not decorative in these applications. It is functional. It is there because no other material conducts electricity as efficiently and reliably at the temperatures and current loads these systems operate at. Think of silver demand in EVs like sandpaper. It is not glamorous. It gets used up in little bits across 1,000,000 applications, and once it is in a vehicle on the road, it is gone. It does not get recycled in any meaningful commercial quantity from automotive applications. It gets dispersed. Now here is the scale problem. Global EV production targets, based on automaker commitments and government mandates across the US, EU, China, and India, point toward hundreds of millions of EVs being produced over the next decade. Even at conservative estimates, if you multiply 40 grams per vehicle by the production volumes being targeted, you are talking about silver demand from EVs alone that is measured in thousands of tons annually within a few years. The total global silver mining output right now is somewhere around 800 to 900 million ounces annually. EV demand alone could consume a percentage of that entire supply that the market has not priced in, because most investors are still thinking about silver demand in terms of jewelry, silverware, and photography, which are the legacy demand categories that have been declining. The new categories, solar, EVs, data centers, grid infrastructure, those are growing fast, and they are growing in ways that consume silver irreversibly. Here is the clean way to think about it. Imagine a restaurant that has always sourced ingredients from 3 farms. 2 of the farms are getting smaller. 1 farm is getting much bigger. The total supply from the 2 shrinking farms has been declining, which kept overall demand looking manageable. But now, the one big growing farm is growing so fast that it is going to consume more than all 3 combined within a few years. That is silver. Legacy demand categories shrinking have masked the explosive growth in new industrial demand. But the new demand is now big enough that the masking effect is ending. Here is a question for you. If every EV mandate globally gets implemented on schedule and each EV uses on average 60 grams of silver, what percentage of current annual silver mining output gets consumed by EVs alone by 2030? Work out the math and drop it in the comments because I want to see if people are running these numbers. Now here is the skeptical alternative. Could silver be engineered out of EVs over time? Could manufacturers find substitutes that perform the same function at lower cost? Yes. Copper is the obvious alternative for many applications, and there is ongoing research into silver-coated copper conductors that reduce silver content per unit. Could recycling technology improve to the point where automotive silver becomes commercially recoverable? Possibly, over a long enough time frame. Here is how the substitution argument fails in the near term. The engineering cycles in automotive are long. You do not redesign a battery management system in 12 months because silver got expensive. By the time manufacturers engineer around silver, the demand has already been met by silver. And the vehicles already on the road, the ones using silver in their electrical systems, those are not going to be redesigned. The silver in them is gone. Substitution is a medium to long-term response to a price signal. In the near term, silver is embedded in the manufacturing process and the supply chain, and changing it out is expensive and slow. That is why the demand story has legs even if the long-term trend is toward reducing silver content per vehicle. And I am going to say something that might annoy both sides. EV silver demand is real and growing, and it matters for the supply-demand balance. It is also not a guaranteed moonshot for silver prices on its own. The demand has to outpace supply additions and recycling improvements, which is likely but not certain. And investment demand, the other major driver of silver prices, can overwhelm industrial demand in either direction when sentiment shifts dramatically. A correlation is not a contract. Industrial demand provides a floor. It does not guarantee a ceiling. Those are two different things. Now let's map two plausible paths without pretending we can predict the exact candle. Path 1. EV adoption continues on its current trajectory. Silver demand from automotive and from solar and grid infrastructure continues to build. The Silver Institute's annual supply and demand data shows growing deficits. The market begins to price in the structural tightness. Silver prices grind higher as buyers compete for physical that is increasingly committed to industrial users under long-term contracts. That is a slow burn that rewards patient positioning over speculative trading. That is within the set of things this market is capable of producing. Path 2. A major supply shock intersects with accelerating EV demand. A key silver-producing region has a disruption. Byproduct silver output from copper and zinc mines falls because those base metals are in a down cycle. And at the same moment, EV production hits its stride globally, with several government mandates taking effect simultaneously. You get a supply-demand gap that closes violently in price terms because there is no short-term supply response available. Time is the weapon here. You cannot speedrun a mine. You cannot speedrun a refinery. And the industrial buyers who need silver do not have the option of not buying it. Their production lines stop without it. That combination is the scenario that produces the explosive silver moves that the headlines will eventually call a bubble, even though it was a fundamental supply-demand mismatch building for years. Here is what to watch. First, watch the Silver Institute's annual World Silver Survey. That is the most comprehensive public data source on supply and demand. If the deficit number keeps growing year over year, that confirms the structural tightness is building. Second, watch EV production data from major manufacturers. If production volumes are hitting targets or exceeding them, the silver demand side of the equation is tracking. If EV sales disappoint, the demand timeline extends. Third, watch silver content announcements from automakers. If any major manufacturer announces a significant reduction in silver content per vehicle, that is a near-term headwind for the thesis. Fourth, watch base metal mining performance because most silver is a byproduct. If copper and zinc production is weak, silver byproduct supply is weak, which tightens the market independently of the demand story. So what do you actually do with this information? Here is a simple action plan. No drama. Step 1. Understand that EV silver demand is a multi-year thesis and position it that way. This is not a 3-month trade. This is a structural demand story that plays out over years. Size your exposure to reflect that timeline. Step 2. If you are going to hold silver as an investment, consider whether you want pure silver exposure through physical or ETFs, or whether you want leveraged exposure through silver miners whose profitability scales with silver prices. Both approaches have merit. Physical is simpler and cleaner. Miners offer more upside per dollar invested if the thesis plays out, with more volatility and management risk. Step 3. Connect the silver thesis to the solar thesis because both are being driven by the same policy tailwinds. Green energy mandates support both solar panel production and EV adoption, and both consume silver. Understanding those policy drivers helps you anticipate when the demand accelerates versus when it slows. Step 4. Do not just chase the silver price, chase the industrial data. The industrial data tells you whether the demand story is intact or weakening. Price chasing without data confirmation is just momentum trading with a fundamental story attached. Now, here are my questions for you. Do you think automakers find a way to significantly reduce silver content per EV within 5 years, or does silver remain essential to the electrical architecture? And if silver goes into structural deficit because of combined EV and solar demand, does the price move in a year, or does it take 3 to 5 years for the market to notice? Drop your answer below and remember to include what day and date you are watching from. Subscribe and comment FinTalk OG so I know you want updates as EV production data and silver supply data evolve. And share this with someone who holds silver for the monetary story alone and has not thought about the industrial demand foundation underneath it. All right? Take care of yourself, and I will talk to you soon. And just so we are crystal clear, this is educational content. It is my take based on publicly discussed information and my own reasoning. And it is not personal financial advice. I am not your advisor. I do not know your goals or your risk tolerance, and I could be wrong. Do your own homework. Consider your situation. And if you need personal advice, get it from a qualified professional who knows your situation.